it turns out, according to Penrose and Hameroff, that this really is the root of all reality. Okay, and you've seen me demonstrate before how we literally can alter reality. All we have to do is change the pattern in these microtubules, and these patterns are changed constantly because they can ravel and unravel in three different ways. Okay, you see them unraveling here. Mitosis is one way that will cause them to unravel. Another way is a soliton wave will cause them to unravel. And you know, I've demonstrated that before. And then the third way they'll unravel is if the water, which is in each and every one of them, starts pulling in quantum phenomenon, and the quantum phenomenon mandates that they start changing patterns. It's completely magical. It's miraculous when you really start looking at all of this. And what gets even more wonderful is that they have found that these microtubules, have these little kind of connectors here, and it turns out that these act like antenna, and it turns out that they actually interact with the mitochondria. What's so special about the mitochondria? Most of our DNA is in the form of mitochondrial DNA. And it turns out that microtubules are intimately connected to our DNA. And so the work done by Bruce Lipton shows that just about anything can alter our DNA, not just evolution. And Lipton gives many cases in which he has shown that the DNA can be altered by words, they can be altered by diet, they can be altered by just about anything in the environment, and he has shown this in very dramatic terms. Okay? Now this is, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is one of the things I want you to see, because what Hameroff discovers is that the mathematical way that the tubulin interact is by using a series of connections based on frequencies. Okay? Now, these frequencies start jumping across these patterns in this form, mathematically a 3, 5, 8, 13. Anyone know what that is? Absolutely. That's a Fibonacci sequence. Yeah? Now, what I've discovered is that this is much bigger than Hameroff realizes, because he's stuck to base 10. He's using base 10. But when you change the mathematical base of the Fibonacci and move into base 9, then an entire world unravels that gets us into the heart and soul of what we call vortex mathematics. Yes?
Are microtubules limited to the brain?
No. Thank you for bringing that up, because I meant to talk about it and I completely forgot. The question is, are the microtubules limited to the brain? No, they are not. The microtubules are in every single cell of our body, where there are 3 layers that make up the cell wall. One of the layers in every single cell is microtubules. So even though Hameroff and Penrose are talking specifically about the microtubules in the brain, it turns out with regards to consciousness, the brain doesn't stick to just the brain. When it starts using soliton waves, the brain literally can use every single cell in our body to activate and to engage consciousness, which means that in a parallel term, some people could equate that with connecting to intelligence. So there is a form of intelligence that is only now being recognized that is completely outside of the body. And I'll get into that a little bit later. I mean, this is just mind-blowing stuff. That shows that we have access to information that is completely outside of our body. Completely. Richard?
the diagram there of the connection between the mitochondria, are we talking string theory at a subatomic level?
The question is this form of string in the microtubules, which connects to the mitochondria DNA, is this parallel to string theory mathematics? Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to get into that, but we'd be here for hours. Okay? All right. So, miraculous, what is starting to be discovered here. I mean, this completely alters the notion, in my estimation, of what it means to be human. All right. Quantum coherence in brain microtubules. Hints of the Supra-Brain and human 3.0. All right. Let me just read this. The origin of consciousness reflects our place in the universe, the nature of our existence. Did consciousness, and I'm now noting, because you can't see this, I'm using a small c here, and to differentiate, I'm calling that small c consciousness human-consciousness. Got it? All right. That human consciousness evolved from complex computations among brain neurons, as most scientists assert, or has consciousness, capital C, in some sense been here all along as spiritual approaches maintain. Now, in all of his work, Hameroff never differentiates between the consciousness that's in the body, which at one point he thought that's the only place it was, with consciousness that is beyond the body, which he later had to change in his theories because it was obvious that consciousness is not limited to the body. Not limited to the body. So he had to then change his theories with Penrose and start talking about consciousness with a capital C. This is not a small matter. Okay? All right. This opens a potential Pandora's box, but our theory accommodates both these views, suggesting consciousness derives from quantum vibrations, string theory, in microtubules inside brain neurons, which both govern neuron and synaptic function and connect brain processes to self-organizing processes in fine scale. Proto-consciousness, quantum structure of reality, referred to as density matrix, close quotes. Interesting term they come up with, density matrix. And when he gets into this notion of what he's calling the density matrix, folks, it's starting to sound like the movie. I'm not joking. What does this mean? Human consciousness creates reality, which is the collapsing of the quantum wave potential. I hope you grasp that, because there is no way a computer is ever going to be able to approach this. No way. When was the last time a machine was able to collapse a wave potential? Has yet to be found. The only time quantum wave potentials occur is under the Heisenberg principle of the observer. And to be the observer, I posit that you must have consciousness present. Question?
I'm just wondering if we could, combine the computer, the data computer, with like a zero-point machine and then get something.
All right, so the statement is, I wonder what would happen if we combine the machine with the human. Is that close enough? You're getting right next to where I'm going to go. Can artificial intelligence be, can consciousness, it, be programmed like a computer language? The answer is yes. Okay? And that is not a happy answer. And I won't get into it right now. Okay, all right. Here is the nexus point of this whole discussion around artificial intelligence versus consciousness. Paul, would you run that?
And then we already mentioned the brain as a computer. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the predominant opinion between neuroscientists, artificial intelligence researchers, and computer scientists is that the brain is basically a straightforward classical Newtonian computer. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely not. Well, no, let me back up. It is for certain things, for non-conscious behavior. When your brain is doing things that may not require consciousness, you know, for example, you're driving to work, or I drive to work the same way, and my mind starts to wander and I'm thinking about my cases for the day. I'm not directly conscious of the road, for example. I may be on autopilot, and that could be classical computing, and I'm driving perfectly well. But when a horn honks or a light flashes or something happens, my consciousness goes back to paying attention or to being conscious of the road. So for things that don't require consciousness, a classical computer at the level of neurons and also in the microtubules might suffice. But for conscious awareness, I think you need something else, some extra ingredient which involves quantum mechanics, I believe. Quantum mechanics is the most successful theory ever put forth. It predicts things out to 25 decimal points in calculations. We know that superposition, that quantum computing, that entanglement all exist. Yes, they're mysterious. Roger has some ideas about that. So just because it's a mystery doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It certainly exists. Now, we know from the days of Niels Bohr, von Neumann, and Wigner, and Henry Stapp more recently, they think that consciousness causes collapse of the wave function. We turn it around. We say that the collapse is consciousness. But whichever view you take, it's clear that consciousness and quantum mechanics are related. And they could be the same mystery. Why not? I mean, they could be related, certainly. They each have their other components or other aspects, but they're clearly related. The question is how.
Let me ask you this then. Randall Kuhn's criticism was perhaps a little bit more specific, and his proposal was that you have to have, perhaps the best way to do it is to have a very specific test or experiment where something specific will happen that cannot be accounted for without quantum mechanics. And he says unless you do that, you cannot prove that the quantum mechanics is relevant at all. And he's obviously one of the skeptics here.
Right. Well, first, I'll answer that in a second. First, let me say, what is the testable prediction coming out of AI and singularity? How are they going to prove their hypothesis? And I've been asking this question for 20 years. I haven't heard an answer.
Ray is giving examples such as the exponential growth of technology and a few benchmarks like Deep Blue defeating Kasparov in chess. Perhaps
that's not consciousness.
Watson defeating Ken Jennings in Jeopardy. Not consciousness, but perhaps the steps, right? So we are short of consciousness.
It's that last step that's the killer. Going from intelligence to consciousness.
But isn't that showing we're getting closer?
No, not to consciousness. We're getting more intelligent computers, to be sure. Closer to consciousness? No, it doesn't say that at all. So there's no testable predictions coming from their side. As far as Randall's question, I would have said, 5 years ago, microtubules must have quantum states. It's been proven. Honorbahn has shown that. I would have said anesthesia must act through microtubules. Now we've shown that. Anesthetics act through microtubules, even though that hasn't gotten out to the general public. So how would we prove it definitively? I'm asking Honorbahn, excuse me, and I think this is going to be done in the fall, to test anesthesia on his quantum states in microtubules. And I think a group from Prague, Mikhail Cifra from Pokorny's group, is going to go and do these experiments. So what they're going to do is establish the quantum state in the microtubule at a certain resonance, bring anesthesia in, put it in a chamber, it's in air, and then you add anesthetic gas. The quantum coherence should go away. You blow off the gas, it should come back. Then you use a second gas that's twice as potent. The same thing should happen at half the concentration. A third gas, and you plot the effect on eliminating the quantum state in the microtubule with a known potency of the gas. If that works, I think that's pretty good evidence for it. And anyway, what we've done is far, far beyond any evidence coming from AI or singularity. They don't even address the issue of consciousness. They kind of treat it as trivial because they can't explain it and don't even want to deal with it.